Hello everyone, and welcome to my first, hopefully of many videos, kind of based on gaming, a little how to play a warlock in World of Warcraft, maybe a little bit more general areas too, but this video mostly I wanted to kind of explain how to play a Demolock in raiding. Demonology, of course, you have your Felguard, Metamorphosis, you're based in the Demonology tree with secondary talents in the Destruction tree. I can go over talents a little bit later. Mostly wanted to focus on three key areas though. Gameplay, what spell to use, when to use them, how to use them efficiently. Add-ons. Add-ons are very important as a Demolock, well, I think, just because as a raider you have to be very aware of your surroundings, you have to know exactly what's going on at all times, and it's just a lot easier to have add-ons to help you kind of gauge what you have available to you at a certain time. And then I'll be going over macros. Now there's not a whole lot of macros for Demolocks, but there are some that I find very useful just to kind of make it a little bit easier. So before I begin the usual gameplay rotation / priority system, I want to talk quickly about two major things that impact Demonology rotations. And if you're a Demolock, you know what I'm talking about, but for those that don't, there's two talents that make demo rotations interesting. And that would be the Molten Core talent and the Decimate talent. So the Molten Core talent has a chance for your corruption ticks to activate Molten Core, which gives your next 3 incinerates a buff. So 18% damage, extra damage, and cast time reduced by 30%. When you're using Soulfire, when Decimate is up, it'll give your Soulfires 18% more damage done and a 15% more critical strike chance. For the most part, you'll be using it for incinerates though in the majority of the fight. And so kind of the handle, well, I guess I should talk about Decimate first. So for Decimate, when your Shadow Bolt or your Incinerate hits, or your Soulfire hits a target that has less than 35% HP, the cast time of your Soulfire is going to be reduced by 40% for 10 seconds. So when you're under 35%, that buff will always be up, because you'll just be chaining that buff over and over. And so to handle these two buffs, what I do is I set up power auras. Now for those unfamiliar with power auras, what it does is it allows you to set up graphics and timers on your screen to kind of help you realize when things are up, how much time's left on something, and stuff like that. So for those that have power auras and know how to get this interface thing out of the way, or how to close it without losing the power auras editor, please leave a comment, let me know, because as you'll see right here, if you try to get rid of that, it gets rid of the editor, which sucks. So please bear with the interface little menu there, and the buffs will show up right behind it at the bottom. So look there. So if I test these out, the ones I use, you'll see 3 right here. The one on the left is for Molten Core, and the number below it is for how many charges are left. So when it initially pops, it'll be 3, and every time I cast an Incinerate or a Soulfire, it'll go down by 1 until it'll disappear. In the middle, I have my Glyph of Life Tap, since I have Spirit enough to use Glyph of Life Tap and I'm a Demolock. And it just has a timer, and so basically you just want to be able to hit Life Tap before that timer runs out, just to keep it always up during the boss, because it's very important. It gives you a lot of spell power, and the more spell power you have, the more spell power you give to everyone else in your raid through Demonic Pact. So that's very useful. The one on the right, the purple little face here, is for Decimate. So that's the 10 seconds of 40% cast time reduction on Soulfire, and that also just has a timer below it. Using these 3 auras in conjunction with each other really helps, because as you know, it's a priority system for which spells you cast, and when you have 2 things up, that being Molten Core and Decimate, it changes what spells to use versus when you just have Decimate or when you just have Molten Core. So it really helps to be able to see kind of everything happening at the same time. Not to mention that because Molten Core is based on your corruption ticks, you can actually regain your 3 stacks before you've used all of them up already. So it can kind of keep rolling over and rolling over. And when you're trying to look up here to where your buffs are, if you're using a buff add-on, if you're trying to look over there for how many charges you have left, it can really kind of throw you off and you won't be paying attention to your environment. So I think it really helps to have power auras. So macros for Demonology, not that big of a deal. You can get around them, like you don't really need to use them, but I really like one macro, and that is tying in your demonic empowerment with your main nuke spells, just to always have it up. Because you don't really have to wait for demonic frenzy on your Felguard, you just want to use it at all times. And so myself, I have it on my Shadow Bolt, and I have it on my Soulfire. So it's not that difficult of a macro, just show tooltip obviously, and then cast demonic empowerment. Now if you freeze frame, I'll put it on I'll actually make it big on the video also, but if you freeze frame, it's /cast exclamation mark demonic empowerment. Now the exclamation mark, what it does is it makes it only try to use it when it's off cooldown, and so it's just a little better of a macro than just having cast demonic empowerment, I find, and then just cast Shadow Bolt. It's the exact same for Soulfire, and that's macros really. I have some intercept macros for focus targets and mouse over targets and that kind of stuff, and in ICC you don't really need that, so not really going to go in depth on explaining that stuff. But for spell rotations, or priority I should say, right off the bat you want to pop Metamorphosis, and the reason you do this is because you want that 20% damage buff on your Curse of Doom. Now in most fights you can get away with charging in and using Immolation Aura, but generally for the first couple tries and some bosses you can't do that. So for simplicity's sake I won't show you the charge in, but generally, so you do Metamorphosis, you pop your Curse of Doom, your Corruption, and then your Immolate, and now it's more the decision making. First, you always want to have a Curse, your Corruption, and your Immolate up at all times. Generally, when you're looking at logs, like World of Logs and stuff like that, you want to have around a 95 to 100% uptime on your dots. It's very important. It's a lot of your damage, especially Corruption, because it allows your procs like Molten Core. But then the decision making happens. If you have a Molten Core proc, you want to start spamming your Incinerate until those charges are done. If you have Decimate, you want to use your Soulfire, and if neither of those are up, you want to use your Shadow Bolt. Now I know I'm not doing anything in game right now, but I just want to explain it. I'll do a little target dummy practice, and then I'm going to pull in some footage of myself in a raid just to kind of give you the real world explanation. When the boss has less than 60 seconds left to live, you want to start using Curse of Agony over Curse of Doom. Now myself, I use a dot macro. I have Corruption as the initial one. It's a cast sequence macro. I'll bring it up here. It's a cast sequence macro where it'll cast Corruption and then Curse of Agony, and it'll reset every 3 seconds, or if I switch targets. So at the last 60 seconds, it's not the most perfect macro for always ensuring Curse of Agony is up. Generally it gets the job done. I'm just lazy right now because of the ICC buff, but generally you should have Curse of Agony on another spell, or on another key binding I should say, just so you always get perfect uptime with it. So now for a little target dummy practice. Oh, I forgot to mention, you should always have